Hey everybody, this is Travis with Vanden Jaeger's House, and I'm going to be making a bunch of videos of our training programs and everything for you to learn how to train your dog. And these online learning training series are going to be everything from obedience to bird dog, protection dogs, scent detection dogs, everything else. But before you can get started in that type of training, you have to understand the philosophy behind our training. And that's what this video series is going to be about. In this first video, I'm going to be talking about our golden rules. Now, there's a lot of rules in dog training, but there's a few that I feel are the most important. Those are the ones that I'm going to cover right now. The first one is what I'm going to be saying a lot in everything, and that's consistency. Consistency is the most important key to any type of behavioral training, whether it be for children or animals or anything. Consistency helps us create a routine, and routines create habits that create behaviors. Imagine trying to start working out. If you get in the routine of going to the gym every morning at 8 o'clock to work out, the more you do it, the faster your body's going to get adjusted, your mind's going to start programming that way, you're going to wake up earlier, and you're going to go and work out and feel better over time. And eventually that's going to become a habit. That's going to become a lifestyle for you. And that's all through consistency. We have to understand that dogs are not verbal creatures. Yes, they bark, yes, they howl, but how they communicate with each other is through body language. So by being consistent in our training, they will learn through body language and then eventually to verbal cues. But they will only do that if we're consistent with how we are giving them this information. So consistency is the most important thing you can do in dog training. And that leads to having a plan. And that's what these videos are for, is to help you develop a training curriculum for your dog. So that way you can create goals and reach those goals in a progressive manner. A lot of dog pet owners, they will buy a dog and not know what to expect. They bring a dog home, it has bad habits, or it's not exactly the dog they was wanting it to be, and after weeks or months they call a dog trainer. Well, I thought the dog would just grow out of this, or we didn't know what we were doing. We've never had this type of dog before. And then the dog trainer has to go back and correct certain behaviors. So a lot of pet owners can fix this by having a plan. Okay, when we get the dog, we're going to start crate training. We're going to start teaching it on leash. We're going to take it for walks. We're going to take it to a puppy class. They don't have a plan, and they just go by the seat of their pants, and that's usually why it doesn't work out. But dog trainers are bad about this as well. I see dog trainers that have a program, and they'll go to a seminar. And they like the way the seminar is set up and how they're given their information. They like this new program. Then they come home and immediately change their existing program and expect the dog to understand what's to be expected now. Then they get frustrated because, for however long you've been training your dog, it's used to a certain routine. And now you're changing things on it, and it feels like it's not fair to the dog. So by having a plan, you create fairness. And by being consistent with that, the dog learns to understand what to expect. And so like I said, this is what these videos are for you to learn, create a program, and to create your own personal goals to abide by and to move forward. The next rule I like to have is name it when you like it. Now this is very important. A lot of dog trainers will start training their dog and they'll say sit. The dog doesn't know what sit means. So now we expect to either physically manipulate the dog into a sit position, or we have to use e-collars or prong collars or something like that to teach the dog to sit. Another problem is if you're in sports and a judge expects to see a dog sit in a certain way or to down in a certain type of way. And if you train your dog from the very beginning to sit, it may be a sloppy sit. It may be sitting on its hip and not square. But you already gave it the command. So you have to reward the dog for sitting. Now, eventually, you're going to have to wean the dog off that sloppy sit and retrain it to sit in the way that you want it to sit. We stop all this by our foundational training. We have 4 phases of training. In the first 3, there are no verbal commands. The first stages, we train the dog through physical manipulation by luring them or using our hands to manipulate them into a position, using body language, spatial pressure, things like that that is physical for the dog. And then once they are consistently giving us the behavior that we are looking for, then we will put it on a verbal cue in the final stage. So we bypass all those problems by only naming it when we like it. And we'll get into more of that later in other videos, but it's very important that you understand that. That also goes to only give the command once. You see this a lot. I used to be a victim of it. Fido, sit. 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 And then the dog finally sits, and you go, good boy, good sit. The problem with this is you're teaching the dog not to listen the first time you said it. You're actually rewarding the dog to only listen the 3rd or 4th time you said it. So only give the command once. Once you give the command, you can either reward the dog for giving the behavior or correct the dog for not giving the behavior. Once again, this relates to fairness. We only give the command when we know the dog understands what we're asking of it. So only give the command once. Always have control of your dog. You should only give a command if you have the means to reward the dog for giving the behavior or correct the dog for not giving the behavior. Go to a park with somebody with a dog and watch. You see this quite often. Somebody will throw a ball. The dog will go get the ball, then just take off the other way with it. Then they start yelling, Fido, here! Fido, come here! Here! And then they end up chasing the dog, and the dog's running away from them. What they effectively done was teach the dog not to listen to them. The dog is self-rewarding. It's taking the ball and running and saying, this is so much better than listening to him. Running with this ball in my mouth and feeling the wind on my face is more rewarding than going back to my owner. So you're creating a bad habit and a bad behavior. Also, you're teaching the dog that you have no control over the dog's behavior at this point. The dog goes, oh yeah, he's giving me a command, but I don't have to listen because he can't stop me. And now the dog knows, well, if I go back to him, he's probably going to punish me for not listening, so I'm going to run around instead. Once again, always have control of your dog. Only give a command once, and then always have control to either reward the dog for the behavior or correct the dog for not giving the behavior. The last golden rule I have is to incorporate this training in every aspect of your life. A lot of students will go home with their dog and do a routine out in the yard. They'll do a heel, sit, down, stay, recalls, things like that, and then the second they go in the house, they don't really care if the dog's fully obedient or not. You'll be laying on the couch and the dog's pacing the floor and you say, go lay down. And the dog keeps pacing the floor. And you say, go lay down. And the dog's pacing the floor and then finally lays down by the door. Well, now the dog has that little inception idea. Leonardo DiCaprio just went into its brain and said, hey, he told me to lay down and I didn't. And he didn't do anything about it. And now you're going to start seeing the dog not listening more and more. And then that's going to leak over into your routines. So instead, reverting back to the other golden rules, only give the command if you have the ability to reinforce it. And you do that by everyday training. What I personally like to do is when I'm cooking supper, I'll tell the dog to lay down. And I'll cook. And if the dog stands up, then I'll say no and correct it. I'll keep doing this. If I'm sitting at the table and I'm eating supper with my family and the dog's at the table and it is begging for food, I'll say place. And the dog goes lays down in its bed. And if it gets up before I release it, then I'll say no and I'll go correct it and put it back into the place command. The more you incorporate this in your daily training, the more fun you can have with your dog. I used to have a dog that I could go to the bank. I'd put the dog in a sit outside the door, and the dog would sit at the door outside the entire time I'm in the bank. Eventually, they said, "You have a really nice behaved dog. You can bring your dog inside. We don't care." Now I could go to the bank and bring the dog in with me. I could go shopping with my dog to a lot of places because I had a well-mannered and well-behaved dog. Through consistency in my training, only giving commands once, being able to control that dog if it listened or didn't listen. Therefore, I had a more fulfilled life with my dog. The dog was able to be a part of my life more than it would have been if it wasn't fully obedient. And that's my goal in training dogs, is not just have a good-looking dog and a well-mannered dog, but a dog that I can have in my life more often so we can have a well-balanced life together. So go back and write these down, these golden rules, and write down your own personal descriptions so they make more sense to you, because after all, this is going to become your training program. And I want you to be comfortable and confident in the steps that I lay out for you so you can train dogs on your own. And that's to be consistent, to have a plan, name it when you like it, only give the command once, and always have control, and then incorporate it into your everyday life.